Good morning. I'm happy to be here and to present results of our new study. As Rarița already said, this is the third study where we used mainly the main instrument of research, the main questionnaire. It's a national sample of artists and other cultural workers. This survey, it has like 300 and something respondents. The questions and also the outline of our presentation, it's here. We will be the questions from the survey related contracts and safety nets for those that do not have contracts. Yes, bargaining power, working hours, income and other resources, or the lack of them. And also, this year we had a new module in our questionnaire about well-being and resilience based on validated scales, international validated scales, but which I will be talking about later on. Just a few, if you want, technical words about the sample. We had most of our respondents were women. The average age. So this is as before in the two previous studies. About the average age, it was 44 years. This age is a little bit higher than the previous research. This is again an indicator that this research is the results of this research are comparable with the previous two ones, and when it's possible, we will do a comparison with the previous research. Almost everybody from the sample is highly educated, yes, and this is also the case in the previous samples. We talk mostly with very experienced workers in average. However, the ranges of experience in the cultural sector is from, if I remember well, from 1 month to 56 years. So yeah, it's quite a range. So let's go to the first slide about the results, the other way around. This way. Okay, let's talk about work arrangements. In a general term, when we ask about contracts or other work arrangements, almost 45 of our respondents work with in the public cultural sectors. 28% are without contract. Can we say these are independents?
Well, let's say that's people that don't have stable working contracts, so that means there's people working on other types of arrangements than a working contract, so they are not employed. Yes.
Yep. We have also artists and cultural workers that do a specific work but outside the cultural, specific artistic work but outside the cultural fields, and also artists and cultural workers that work in the private cultural sectors.
So I think what's really interesting is because in Romania we don't really have data on employment in the cultural sector in the private sphere. So from our research we can say something about proportions, at least, that we have 10% people from our sample, yes, 10% people employed in the independent sector, meaning that it's NGOs and companies, and we have 44 that are employed in public institutions, in cultural public institutions. And then we have this 17% of people that actually are working, have a job in a different sector, but they are artists. So I think that's the kind of red flag, when you have to have a job in a different sector to go on and survive.
Yes, and maybe another thing that is really important here, it's about how do those without formal standard contract manage to resolve their health insurance. This is an important thing, and we found out that more than half from those without contracts voluntarily pay for a public health insurance, but a fifth of them are not insured. And this, from a fifth from those that are without contracts, to be precise, and this represents almost 6% from the entire sample. Okay. Good. Let's see something about the bargaining power. We had a question that reads like that: for how many contracts were you able to negotiate your remuneration? And we compared the results of this survey with the previous two ones. Yeah, 61. It's for this survey that said that they weren't able to negotiate.
So mostly people do not have they are not in the position of negotiating their contracts or their work. And actually we see a very little bit difference between artists and other types of culture workers. So probably we can imagine, we can speculate that established artists maybe are in the position to say and claim support, but most of the others not so much. And I think if we go to the next slide,
yes.
We also ask some questions about how people receive or not support for different stages of the cultural production cycle. So we ask if they get money for their research, if they get money for travel and residencies, if they get money for work that they initiate, if they get money for work that is commissioned. And we ask if they get money, like as a fee, and if they get compensation, or if they get only compensation, like I get the travel costs covered but not a fee. So we ask all the possible combinations, and what we find out from this is that, you see, 70% of the artists had totally no international mobilities. The reference year was 2024, so that is last year had, and what you see there in green in the first question is a very tiny slice of our sample that were people that were doing residencies and were paid, like they had a fee and they had their costs covered. Then, for instance, when you see red and then sliding scale, this is kind of the no and yes, and those in between is either I got only my costs covered, or I only got a fee but not my other costs covered. So. We will not go into all the details, but I think what is really interesting for us to see is that there's very little support for research, for this type of more invisible work. There is support for presenting your work and for production. And I think that's something that we, as a sector, need to see. Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe a few words about maybe autonomy. The last bar. Works carried out by one's initiative. 52% yes, but I didn't receive any compensation. So artists and cultural workers do have their project, but this project are not funded. Many of them. So the autonomy, no autonomy
yes,
here.
Exactly. That was our point in asking this question, to see if people get support for their own creative projects. And there's, well, let's say almost it's 16% that really get full support for their own artistic initiatives. The others mainly do it from their own money or with very little support.
Yes, let's go on. Let's talk about a little bit about working time and income. So in average, artists work and cultural workers work more than a standard norm of 40 hours per week. Yeah. Our average is 45 actually, and almost 60% of the respondents work more than 40 hours per week. Actually, almost 1.5 norm. In average, 65 hours. 56 hours. I'm reading it backwards. Okay. That's almost 1.5 norm. 1.4. Yeah, and maybe what is, I will let Rarița talk about the incomes here. Maybe what is also interesting, remember that we have a sample of highly educated people. And when I compare the income from the monthly income for this sample with the national average for the last year, this one it's lower. And this should not be the case, as the studies show that in Romania, people with higher education are better paid. This is not the case here.
Yeah, so I think more or less every slide confirms the precarity of the cultural system. I presume it's not a surprise for anyone, but it's just that this is the data confirming it. And what we also found interesting is that you see that we have almost 60% of people that work almost 56 hours a week, but their payment is not bigger than the payment of someone, like the revenues, than someone that works 40 hours, so someone that works a regular job, which we speculate to mean that either people do, like if they have a job, then they do other gigs because they want to be present in the cultural sector, but these are not so well paid, so that's how they make up more hours, or that maybe really this type of work is not so well paid. So doing more work is not is not going to pay. So what we found out generally is that those that felt secure were mainly people that were employed in the public cultural sector, meaning that it's really important to safeguard the working conditions that are there in the public sector and extend them to the private sector, to the independent sector, rather than making that work precarious too. I think we can move forward.
Yeah, maybe the last point is that we have of course we have higher average income in this survey compared to the previous ones, even controlling after inflation. We did that.
Yes, and we also see with revenues, so this is net amount.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, for those of you that don't know what lei mean, it doesn't mean much, but let's say the first number in the first column is around 1,000 euro, and then the other ones are probably around 8.
We have to divide by 5.
800 euro, the other ones, and we see that there is a difference from
Okay, let's
public system and private system. Yeah.
Let's go on and talk about
Yes, perceptions about
socio-economics.
the work in the cultural sector, and here, well, we ask, do you think that the cultural sector is prepared to meet the artificial intelligence? And of course, most of the results are no. Here the question is unprepared, so mostly with the green says they agree that it's unprepared. We ask if it's digitalized enough. I think this is kind of a split opinion. Some people think we are good enough with the level of digitalization. If we think that it has a social role in tackling climate change, I think for me this was a surprise that culture professionals do not necessarily perceive. So we have 71% saying they don't really perceive that the cultural sector has a role to play in raising awareness, fighting climate crisis. That it's sustainable, like it has sustainable practices. This is again a split perspective. That it provides equal rights and opportunities for workers of different genders, and that's also that already becomes shady. Yes, it's not perceived by more than a half as I say more than a half because the green also means somewhat, you know.
Somewhat, yes.
Yes, and when it comes to fair and just, it looks much worse. So it's not perceived as a fair and just system.
And this is consistent with the previous researches.
Yeah.
Also, it's important to say. Okay, I will say maybe a technical part. So here we use the well-being scale, a mental well-being scale proposed by the World Health Organization, WHO5, and tested in other national, international context. It's based on 5 questions, 5 items, asking people about their mood, their energy, their daily functioning, and it scales from 0 to 100, where bigger scores means better well-being. Okay. What we found out is that the score from our sample is a little bit lower than 50. That's a red flag. That's a red flag here because we have possible mental health. This is the possible mental health risk threshold by World Health Organization. We didn't invent this. And also important, actually a little bit more than 50% of our sample reported scores below 50. Yeah. Should we go to the chart or?
Yes, and I think we also had some other questions around work-life balance, and we see like a quarter are really struggling with that. We also ask, when your revenue is not enough, what are you relying on? And mostly said, my own savings or partners, families. So it's really a sector that relies a lot on private connections and not so much on systemic support.
This is a or you want to see this?
Yeah, I think that shows it. Yeah, we go to
yeah. This is the. I think it speaks
Yes.
for itself. It's a comparative.
The last red line is the score, the average score of our sample, and it's lower than the national average for the WHO 5.
The national,
well-being scale throughout
the EU
Europe.
28 average, and you see, this is all, just to put it in context.
Yes.
Okay, should we move forward? Let's go.
We're already late.
Okay, let's talk about resilience. Again, this is a tested resilience scale proposed by Connor and Davidson with CD risk to scale captures. It is related to adaptability and bouncing back after stress. Actually, this is our and it scales scaled from 0 to 8. Higher score, better resilience. Yes. This is the average from our study, and I will let you see some charts to put it again in context with other international research on general population, on students, and young adults. In the sample, when we compare with students and young adults, we scaled our score for professionals up to 40 years old, and different professionals categories that were studied in different contexts. With red, reddish, it's our study.
And I think the previous slide also had a figure that we asked people if they ever consider giving up their work in the cultural sector, and 66% said that they thought sometimes about leaving the sector.
Many times or sometimes.
Many or
sometimes. Let's move on. We had an open-ended questions also, asking our respondent about the priorities in the sectors. We coded these priorities. These were all open-ended. We read and coded this, and we have I guess 7 points that maybe are of interest after interpreting our results. So they felt that it's a need for better funding schemes and more predictability in the sector. They need better social protection. I will let that talk about the legal framework because you know it better here. But they felt it's lacking.
There were flags about the systems of management in public institutions, in NGOs, so around the cultural sector, power struggles, the need to have more fair and sometimes well-established working contracts that would prevent this type of power dynamics to harm people. Definitely, there's need of more infrastructure, but it's not always thought in terms of proposed in terms of physical infrastructure, but also need to have conditions to meet in networks and spend time together, learn from each other, training programs, more access for the general population, but also for the culture workers to have access to lifelong training and professionalization, and generally speaking, well-being and artistic freedom. And actually, we had a dedicated question to artistic freedom, and we had, it's a very interesting result. We didn't have this question in the previous research, so we don't know exactly if this is a growing thing, but we had about a quarter of the respondents saying that they have self-censored. So like they decided that they didn't feel safe enough to express their opinion or their artistic opinion in a certain way. We had a smaller amount that said around 3.5% said that they were explicitly censored. Mm-hmm. But there was another quarter saying that they felt pressure from outside. So they felt that someone discouraged them not to express a certain opinion, not to choose a certain work for an exhibition, because this would create conflicts with the church, with the local administration, that the audience is not open enough for this. We also heard from people that they felt that the AI algorithms, and also not the AI, the social media algorithms are the ones censoring them. It's like they have been banned, blocked for their professional related posts.
Actually, just a small completion here. This is in line with very recent studies about censorship about artistic freedom in Europe, and not only in Europe. A study from this year and a study from a couple of years back. They say the same thing, actually, even in well-developed democracies.
I would say we stop here, because actually we also had some proposals. What we can do to go to the QR code where
this one.
The report is online.
Mm-hmm.
So you can access it either if you go on the Cluj Cultural Center website in the research page, you find it as the newest publication. But if you want now to get the link to it,